and welcome to MSESL English. Today is this week's final episode. Again, we're talking about time. This week we spoke on Tuesday about Thief of Time, Terry Pratchett's fantastic novel. And yesterday we talked about using time as a noun in sentences. Today is going to be a way shorter episode, like super duper extra short, since both of those were kind of long. Today we're looking at the words one day, so using one day to talk about the future. Often due to grammar structure or vocabulary, different languages express similar ideas in very different ways. And that means that it's quite common when you're thinking really fast to make a sentence, you'll use the way that you would usually say it in your own language, whether grammatically or vocabulary-wise. This sometimes translates okay, but sometimes it's not necessarily meaningful when we translate it to English. So, for example, this week, one of my students said, "If I will have children next years." I totally understood what she meant. Absolutely, I understood exactly what she meant. But in English, we would express it a little bit differently. So that's what I wanted to look at today. So rather than next years, the idea that something might happen relatively soon in the next few years, we tend to put it an unknown distance in the future when we do it in English. So one day, we don't know when it's going to happen. If you know that you want it to happen in the next couple of years, then you're much more likely to say in the next few years. So if you know, like, I want to get a new job in the next few years, then we're talking about 2 or 3 years in the future. And you know that that's your time frame. But if you don't know what your time frame is, or it's something that you're talking about kind of wistfully, there's a word that we used on Tuesday, you know you want to get married one day. You could say that when you're 8, you could say it when you're 16, you could say it when you're 35. You don't know if and when it's going to happen. So that's the kind of situation we would use one day for. The way that I would say my student's original sentence then is, if I have children one day. An indefinite thing that may or may not happen, if, at some point, but we don't know when, in the future, one day. We use this a lot in English to express hopes, dreams, or worries about the future. So it doesn't actually have to be positive or negative to use one day. For example, you might have a mother or father who's reaching maybe 60s, 70s years old, and they're talking to their son or daughter, and they're saying, what if something happens to me one day? They're thinking about a negative situation in the future. We never know when we're going to die, unless you're a witch. I've been reading too much Terry Pratchett. I apologize, everybody. We don't know when it's going to happen, so it's going to happen one day, but we're worried sometimes when we think about the people around us, how it's going to affect them. So that's why we could use this statement. We might have hopes and dreams that we want to have. One day, I hope to visit America. So in this case, it's much more of a statement. We're not saying if, or maybe, or it could happen. We're saying this is something I want to do, but I don't know exactly when I'm going to do it. So we don't need the if part to use one day. The main point with one day is we don't know exactly when it's going to happen. It's at some point in the future. And then we might have, if we meet again one day. If we meet again, we don't know if it's going to happen. It's open to possibility. In this case, we also might use someday, if we meet again someday. In fact, both of these are okay for this situation, one day and someday. So it's possible to use one day or someday for all of these examples that I've given you. And the meaning is exactly the same. Someday, we don't know when it's going to be in the future. The same with one day. Someday, I think, is less certain, maybe. One day I hope to visit America. Someday I hope to visit America. I think one day is more certain that something you're going to really try hard to do, whereas someday I hope to visit America is much more wistful. We don't really know if it's going to happen. We're not really sure about it happening. So I do think there is a slight difference in meaning of someday being more maybe. And of course, from Disney, one day my prince will come. Wait a second, is that someday? Someday my prince will come. Now I'm going to have to go and Google that. All right, I'm off to YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, you can ask me any of your English questions at emmaseSlenglish@gmail.com, or you can head over to the blog at emmaseSlenglish.com to find out all of the previous podcasts and everything that we've done today written down. All right, I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week. Bye.